Hey guys, welcome back to Enlightened Turtle. It's your host Kev here. So, I'm sure by now the news has probably filtered through to people in the community of the sadly and untimely death really of Baram Blackett, who was obviously an associate of Alan Wilson, the two of them becoming Baram and Blackett, Wilson and Blackett. Famous researchers in a whole plethora of different fields really, to be honest, spent their whole lives pretty much dedicated to British history and world history for that matter. I mean, a lot of their information goes way back, doesn't it? You know, you're talking Nineveh, excuse me, when they talk about the work from Leonard Woolley and the work done on the excavations at Nineveh, where they found. Now, I made a post about this on that British History Uncensored group only a few weeks ago, where Alan Wilson he draws comparison to the Lexden Mound. I think that's in Surrey, or is it Colchester? I can't remember. Somewhere in the UK anyway, where you've got like balls, recliner models. You've got all these different items that were discovered in this mound, and over in Mesopotamia, in the ancient city of Nineveh, like I say, Leonard Woolley done his excavations and he unearthed similar artifacts. So they linked that together, obviously, and then you've got the Aldeceners, or the old Syrians, allegedly in the area of Surrey. A little side note on that, I will just say, is it not possible that it's called they're called the old Syrians because that's where they originated from? I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it's not, but could it not work both ways? You know, east to west, west to east. However, I'll leave that there. Like I say, this video is just a little, almost just like, I don't know what to say, to be honest. I remember Peter, if you're watching this, you might remember having this conversation on the old Britain's Hidden History Facebook group when we were both there, where there was the passing of Ross and the outpouring of emotion from a lot of people really, with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different feelings towards the information. But regardless of all that, I think everyone could admit that Ross was such a nice guy, you know, instrumental in the community really of bringing awareness to the Britain's Hidden History and predominantly the works of Wilson and Blackett. Now, Peter made a comment to me saying that I tried to try explaining to your family, sorry, let me rephrase that. I tried to explain, how do you explain to your family that you care so much about someone you've never met? So I struggle to get that out there. But that sentiment is, it rings true, because like I never got to meet Ross, but as soon as he made that comment, like it rang a bell, and I was like, how do you explain that to people it's a person you've never met? I had only known him for like 8 months, spoke to him a few times in chats and in comment sections. Fair play to him, he actually popped onto my channel and commented on a few of my videos and engaged with me on that level. So he was a cool guy, like I say, but his main focus was Wilson and Blackett's work. Now, I've actually got some books here. Sorry, take the hat off. I've been out walking the dog. Sorry. I'd always swap hats and put this one on, eh? Someone got me this. It's like a train driver's hat. Brown suede though, it's really nice, to be honest. So let's just have a little look at a couple of these books. And in fact, I'll tell you what. I remember Peter also made reference to, like, he'd love to see me library. This is one of my bookcases, so I'll turn the camera around a minute and show you a couple of my books. But one thing I wanted to mention as well is, you know, Rita, who's a legend for that. No light bulb, I only have lamps in my house, never put the lights on. You made an interesting point there, you know, like the timing of everything. I think Rich from Rich Planet, he put someone put a little feed of his comments on Britain's History Uncensored on Facebook this morning, which is when I first seen that he'd passed away. And let's just break it down. Obviously, he passed away in a house fire. I do believe it said there was 2 people, 60 plus, who passed away. So I don't think he was alone when this happened. But as Rich put on his post in this comment section, that, you know, there was an attempt on Baram's life in the past, apparently. An incendiary device, basically a bomb of sorts, or a combustible device that caused fire, was apparently placed underneath his bed, only it didn't work. It started smoking and the alarms went off or whatever, and they managed to rectify the situation, but they knew who the person was. Now, when you think that Ross passed away only about, what, a year and a half ago, something like that, the timing is quite nefarious. Obviously, you've had Ross has passed away, and he was doing a lot of work when it came to Wilson and Blackett, because they, not just bringing attention to their older works, but there was also a lot of new work that had been taking place since they'd last published books. Now, Baram Blackett obviously produced a book to do with St. Patrick, I believe it was, which I haven't seen that book, unfortunately. I might get round to one day. But apparently they had loads of work that was unpublished. Now, I do remember Ross holding files and saying, look at all this. Like, he'd been to see Alan and Baram, and he'd got loads of material. Excuse me. Now, I know he did release some small PDF forms, one of them pertaining to the Odyssey and Odysseus and his adventures. But the bulk of what Ross had, as far as I'm aware, was not actually released. It was not actually published. And it was more like raw data that needed to be edited and compiled. So unfortunately, like when Ross passed away, one of my first comments obviously was condolences and things like that. But then after a week or two, I felt prudent to ask, is anyone going to continue the interviews with Alan Wilson? Baram wasn't too big on being in front of the camera, fair play to him. But Alan, he thrived in that environment, didn't he? You know, you put a camera in his face and ask him a question, bam, he was gone. So we're very fortunate that we actually got them interviews between Ross, Kelvin and Alan and Baram. But unfortunately, like I say, all that work that being compiled has been lost. And then you add into the fact that this Ross passed away, then Alan's passed away, and then now you've got Baram who's passed away, who was probably he had all the documents, he had all the information, all the files, manuscripts, old ancient books that they'd been collecting for like 50 years. Now, that's all gone now in a house fire. Boom, just like that. The 3 main guys of the community, really. I know there's a lot of people in this like history community, and you know, there's a lot of different ideas and thoughts, and I don't necessarily believe everything that Alan Wilson and Baram Blackett say or said. You know, if I can just let me clear a little bit of my bookshelf here. Some people just never grow up, sorry. This, people wondering what this is behind me, this is the Last Supper. Now, let me see, where's their books? So you've got this book, which is The Trojan Conflict of 650 BCE. Now obviously people know, who are regulars to the channel, I disagree with that. And where's the other one? Oh, it's there. You've got this one, which we've done a little reading out of recently, which we're going to circle back to very soon, which is Moses and the Hieroglyphs. Now, like I say, these 2 guys, they got work spanning from Nineveh, Mesopotamia, several thousand years ago, through to Brutus and allegedly the Trojan War, and Brutus being an heir of Aeneas, leaving Italy and travelling to Britain, where Britain allegedly got its name from. There's other theories on where Britain got its name from, you know, Briatain and things like that. So we won't get too tied up into that, but they did a lot of work, and it's such a big loss to the community. I'm a little bit lost for words, a little bit, if I'm being completely honest, because it's a strange situation we find ourselves in, myself and other people who are now looking at this material and looking to advance it and spend the spare time really getting into it, because I'd never say that these people were murdered. I wouldn't say that. But as I mentioned earlier on, it's very nefarious. The timing, the way it's unfolded, and then the final death there, Baram, the whole house has gone up in flames. And as you so aptly put there, Rita, you know, this is a lot of information that we're never going to now get to see. It's never going to come to the light of day. So it's almost like people in the excuse me, tripping over my own tongue there. It's almost like people in the community now need to maybe step up and maybe get a bit more work done, take things a little bit more seriously, myself included, to be honest. So yeah, let's have a little look at my bookcase then. So we've got, I think this will all be back to front on the camera, so I'll read them. We've got like Where Troy Once Stood. This is Iman Wilkins, absolute legend, genius. This book is so impressive. It's not cheap, but it's completely worth purchasing if you're interested in that kind of stuff. We've got here, this is a book I haven't really read yet. This is Richard Morgan on St. Paul and his early times in Britain, in Christendom. In fact, you know, I'm going to put this down. I'll pull the books down because it might be a bit easier. Because they're all like bunched up. Got, this is my first Coleman's Beaumont book that I've been getting into a little bit. This is The Great Deception of Britain, and to be honest, it's very interesting. A lot of his information is so different from a Wilson and Blackett. Now, I'm not going to start drawing distinction and say who's right and who's wrong, but there's a lot of differences between these guys. You know, you've got another book here from Richard Morgan, which is the Cymry, the British Cymry, or what does it say, Britons of Cambria. Now this is fascinating stuff, this, because it goes into a lot of details and a lot of information on a whole lot of different topics to do with British history, from Brutus to the Pendragons, you know, ancient law. Like, I'll just read this little excerpt here. The vast monumental remains of the Druidic establishment extend over Britain from Cornwall to the Hebrides. Now, if anyone have seen my video, the Hebrides and the Hesperides, check that one out. In South Britain, or Loegria, I always say Loregia because it's just easier for me to pronounce, ancient England. The central temples were those of Amber and Bellin, or Stonehenge. In Albion, Perth and its vicinity in Cambria, Mona were the chief districts for the obelisks, or obelisk churches, and the splendid national ceremonies therein performed. So he's talking about Stonehenge, the Druids already. That's just off one little paragraph. Obviously, people know I've got Lawrence Waddell's books, which are fascinating books as well. You know, P also put me onto this book, which I haven't got round to reading fully yet, but I got as far as I put part of this in a previous book. Sorry, in a previous episode. If you look here, it shows you all the countries that had been conquered within the Roman Empire and stuff like that, and which one had a language changed. Now, no nation that's ever been conquered in this list, and there's a good 20 odd nations here, all those nations kept their language, but allegedly when the Anglo-Saxons invaded Britain, they replaced the language. That can't be found in Germany, which is like just tells you how thin the materials are that are used by the mainstream. Now this is an interesting book. This is one I republished. Everything in this book is public domain, but look how dense it is. And this is about the Dorians and how the Dorians migrated into the Aegean. Now, I don't want to give too much away because I haven't fully read this book yet. I've only read like up to like halfway through the first chapter. But what we do find is the Dorians were they venerated Apollo. Apparently, when they turned up in the northern Aegean, northern Greece, what we call Macedonia and places like that today, they settled on the foothills of Olympus. Now, I'll leave it there. There's a lot of information actually. I don't want to butcher it, but I've been putting bits together. We will be doing a better Dorian video in the future. Obviously, you've got, this is an interesting book by John Collins. Now, if anyone's seen, forgive me the chap's name, I'll put it on the screen now. I watched his lectures recently and someone put me onto him. I didn't know who this person was, never heard of him in my life. And he was English from Oxford University. And like I say, he'd done 2 lectures, and on one of the lectures, this book was on the screen behind him of 3 books. And this is one that Ross advised me to get a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that. That's an interesting book, that, because it's got a lot of detail. Oh, let me pull it back down. It's got a lot of detail on the Celtic lore and mythology. Now, if you look, it's got maps in there. It's got, let's see, artifacts. You've got brooches, weapons, coins. Now, people like this, I find, are mainstream, that are moving. They're aware of people like Waddle. Let me get, where's a Waddle book? Yeah, you've got I'll pick a good page here. Sorry, bear with me. Butterfingers. You've got Waddle, who shares all this kind of information. Now, all this information is there. Waddle's documented it, he's recorded it, but not everyone agrees with his theories or his hypothesis. So you're getting people like that John Collins in that Celtic book who were aware of all this material, but they could never in a million years, without losing the job probably, transcribe to Waddle's way of thinking. So they're trying to mesh and merge things in, but what you find when you're reading these people's works is they often leave a lot of information out, and yeah, but that's a good book. That where else are we? I'm just trying to pick out some good books that I think people would really like, and it could help like advance their thoughts and stuff like that. This is obviously a book I've mentioned in the past as well, but I haven't really got time to read it at the moment. The Holy Kingdom by Adrian Gilbert. He done this book with Alan Wilson and Baram Blackett. The quest for the real King Arthur. So I've had this conversation with people in the past. I'm not really looking into AD territory. I will probably come round through that period in the future, but AD is not really a focus of interest for me. I'm more interested in the Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, you know, the Trojan conflict area. And we've got loads to discuss on that. I don't want to like start going off on all mad segues. And yeah, you know, there's just loads of books. Yeah, let me slide this along because it's just blocking off now. You've got, I mentioned this one in the past, Centuries of Darkness. This is one of the source books for Wilson and Blackett, especially when it came to the chronology. A lot of the information in this book is quite detailed. A very well researched book, to be quite honest. Like, we've got the Zodiac there, got lots of different bits and bobs. You know, that's the famous Battle of Kadesh, I think, by the look of it there. Yeah, Ramesses II, so yeah, I think that's the Battle of Kadesh. You know, different kinds of potteries, and you know what's interesting, a lot of this information tends to go to the Aegean area, and that's why that book on the Dorians is vital to a lot of my research moving forward, because I need to fully understand who were the native peoples of Greece, who were the peoples that moved in and out of Greece, what do we find in the pottery, the genetics. I'm not a big supporter of genetic studies, to be honest, because we've talked about this in the past. You know, an invading force can come in, basically overthrow the local gene pool, and then 500 years later you might get a lot of mummies or bones and remains, and then associate those conquering peoples with the natives, and then there's other things that pop up as anomalies, and you know, blah 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 blah, goes on and on and on. What else is the... So I've got, obviously, I don't know what books else to pick out here. Obviously this is a new book that this only came yesterday. This is going to be an interesting book coming down the pipeline, because that next big video I'm going to be discussing a couple of posts that I've already shared, but there's other material that I haven't shared yet. But the ones that I did share was pertaining to chariots and different kinds of chariots, more specifically the usage. And then we're going to be looking at the canines, as I mentioned in that previous video, and domestication of canines and their use in cattle rearing. Now, when I put them posts together, part of it was because I discovered recently that there's wheat, agricultural wheat grains discovered in South England that were, I think it was like 6,000 BCE. Now that's a long time ago. Or was it 4,000 BCE, 6,000 years ago? It was one or the other, forgive me. But the point is, it was 2,000 years before farms were supposed to be active in Britain. Now, obviously, I totally disagree with that. And not only that, but when we discuss the Trojan War and things like that, you know, one of the quotes in the Iliad is the mention of fields of wheat, the large abundances of wheat found around Troy, Ilium, the Trojan capital. Now, if you go and look in Cambridgeshire, East Anglia, that's exactly what you find. And I've been putting bits and bobs together, and somebody mentioned that this book from Francis Pryor, well, they just mentioned his name, something Johnson, I can't remember his name. If you're watching, I don't think he watches my channel, but thanks for pointing this out for me though. He's done a lot of work, and he's done a lot of work in an area called the Fens. Now, this book only arrived today. I've not had a chance to read it, but having a quick courtesy glance, I could see via the photographs, he is finding the areas, he is in the area, and he made a lot of the findings in Cambridgeshire that we shall be discussing in the future that I didn't realise. And one of them, I will give you this little nugget, and specifically farmsteads. He's a supporter of a prehistoric farming community rather than the farming community arriving with the expulsion out of Asia Minor and the Aegean. Now, one of the things also, and I came across this on his documentary, because he's actually got documentaries on YouTube. The quality is not great, to be honest, and there's a lot of information that I think he should have put in there that I don't think he did. But one of them is he finds a tree, and it's an upside down tree surrounded by a wooden hinge. Now, he makes this comment very passing that it's an oak tree. Well, yes. Well, if you go and read this book, sorry, I've got to start moving books around again. If you were to read this book, the Iliad, and that's the Odyssey as well, I've not got to this part yet, just going through the Iliad. If you read this, you'll discover that the oak tree is mentioned several times, the mighty oak. Now, this book, which is my published book again, it's not much of a book really. It's just the first few pages is an introduction where I start putting some ideas and notions down, and then basically the rest of the book is Dora's and Dicatus, the two different accounts of the Trojan conflict, and you'll see the oak tree is referenced quite a lot. Now, Zeus is associated with the oak tree, and there's numerous other gods and Celtic deities and Norse, and all this kind of stuff as well, and over into northern part of Germany. There's so many different references to the oak tree. Now, he finds that there's a buried upside down oak tree in East Anglia, and don't forget this is the epicenter really. When we're going back this far, this is where the trade seems to be taking place. We have trade between Scandinavia in through the Orkney Islands, coming into Scotland, northeastern England. We have places like Belgium, northern France. Later on, hundreds, thousands of years later even, we have the Belgae. And there's a lot of stuff made of this Belgae tribe coming into southeast England. Well, excuse me. Excuse me. Well, this is the period also of which the Sacs, Julius Caesar was meant to have been coming over to England, to Britain, and then you've got all these different tribes that are coming over, the Danes, the Jutes, Angles, Saxons, whatever, and that takes place over the next 1,000 years pretty much. Well, there's a lot going on in this part of the country, and obviously if you tie that in to you have the southern areas of Britain, like southern England, then that's when we start to see the connections with France, Brittany, over Bristol, that side, the estuary over there. We see ships, merchants coming in and out of there. And then if you went round even further to the west, then you start to see the linkage between the Mull of Kintyre, Anglesey, and my home, Merseyside, all this northwest region, and then the actual western part of Wales, and that all connecting into Ireland. And then off that, we see what I've hypothesised and what we will discuss further in the future. Sorry, this video is getting well too long now. Which is the Western Celts, as they're called, the Western Celtic cultures. All these peoples that migrated up and down the the western coast with trade and all this kind of stuff, and then into the Aegean. Now, there's a lot of people, like I say, this chap, Colmians Beaumont, he believes that civilization pretty much began in Britain. It was the epicenter and expanded out. But we've got all this to discuss. We've got so much to discuss, to be honest. And like I say, this wasn't really much of a video. This was more me. I just wanted to kind of pay me respects to... Sorry, I won't sit back down now. I wanted to kind of pay me respects to Wilson and Blackett, and obviously the late great Ross Broadstock, because unfortunately the timing is, I say, very nefarious. All three have passed away in less than 2 years. And it seems as though they were literally just about to start producing a whole lot of new material. So, yes, it's a sad day for the community. It's a very sad day for the community, really. It's the end of an era. And I guess the only way you can kind of look at it now is it's up to other people, as I mentioned previously, to step up now and actually take it a bit more seriously. I just hope people aren't deterred by any potential conspiracies that, these people were taken out. Could they have been taken out? It is possible, of course, anything is possible. But try not live in that realm, because that's fear. We can't let fear control our destinies, you know what I mean? It's like, if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen. I believe in God, so hopefully the Lord will guide me, and whatever I do in life is what I was supposed to do. Now we're getting into the realms of, are we free? Really, truly free? Is everything preordained? And all these kind of things. I had a good lecture. I say lecture, I used this word once to someone the other day, and I haven't stopped using it. I didn't realise, but a lot of the videos I've been doing, they're basically lectures, and for someone who's taught himself how to read and write, I left school when I was like 11, you know, come a long way in this field, and there's still a long way to go. So like I say, please don't be deterred, anyone. If anyone's made it this far in this video, you're a legend as well. But yeah, it's a sad day. Hopefully the funeral goes off and, you know, people celebrate, and unfortunately, like I say, it's the end of an era of those 3 individuals, but the entire community as well. So yeah, just a sad day. I'm kind of lost for words still, because again, I don't want to get too deep, but a year or so, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I didn't know any of this information. 100% didn't know any of the names, didn't know any of the information, didn't know any of the arguments or anything like that. So for me, I feel like the loss is almost greater, because I don't know them. I didn't get to fully understand their information and then see how they reacted in interviews, and see what their expressions were and where their heart lied on a lot of the information. All I've got's like the hard data, but like I say, thankfully, and such a blessing really, that Ross made them videos, and Rich, from Rich Planet, he done a series of interviews which you can still find in places on the internet, and yeah, just legends, aren't they? Legends of the game. I don't think anyone's done more for British history in the past 100 years than Wilson and Blackett, and the person who was perfectly positioned on the inside, coming round the last bend, ready to attack that straight, was Ross. He was the man who was ready to bam, straight to the finish line, you know. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a great loss, and this video has probably dragged on a little bit too long, so I apologise for that. But yeah, so as you can see, I'm back in my studio. I've been putting bits together this morning. I just took Taz for a walk and came back and thought, I just want to make this video. Hey guys, I just want to do a quick reading of a poem from this book, and it's called Poems for Life, selected by Laura Barber. And I'm going to be reading a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson called Escape at Bedtime. The light from the parlour and kitchen shone out through the blinds and the windows and bars, and high overhead and all moving about, there were thousands of millions of stars. There near were such thousands of leaves on a tree, nor of people in church or the park, as the crowds of the stars that looked down upon me and glittered and winked in the dark. The dog and the plough and the hunter and all, and the star of the sailor and Mars, these shone in the sky, and the pail by the wall would be half full of water and stars. They saw me at last, and they chased me with cries, and they soon had me packed into bed, but the glory kept shining and bright in my eyes, and the stars going around in my head. So I thought that was a very apt poem, Escaping to Bedtime. I hope Ross, Kelvin, Broadstock, Alan, Wilson and Baram Blackett sleep easy now. They started a mission, and I'm pretty sure there's plenty out there who are ready to take up the mantle. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that little poem and the video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Stay safe. Peace.